This film was made possible by a grant from Hershey Chocolate, USA. 25, and now he's hit and hit hard from the 27-yard line. Rosa Kennard made the tackle. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, marked the beginning of the United States' official involvement in World War II. While the American Congress debated U.S. involvement in the war, Germany and Italy acted quickly, declaring war on the U.S. only 4 days after the attack. Although the U.S. had previously declared neutrality in the war, they were involved as trade partners to what would soon become known as the Allied Powers. Pearl Harbor thus acted as a spark to the United States' inevitable involvement in the global issue. After being attacked on their home soil, Americans were ready to fight back. Total war had begun. The line between combat and civilian life was blurred, and all resources were put forth by the United States to ensure victory. Production increased, women entered into the workforce, and the average American was limited by rationing. Every American was issued a series of ration books during the war, which contained removable stamps good for certain rationed items like sugar, meat, cooking oil, and canned goods. By limiting the average civilian consumption, the government could in turn ship rationed goods to soldiers overseas. Rationing was not, however, a strictly domestic problem. Large-scale companies felt the wartime restrictions as materials like rubber and sugar were limited in the production process. The Office of War Information popularized the militarization of food through posters, film shorts, radio broadcasts, and propaganda that the Allies would win from combining democratic institutions with productive capitalism. Companies which excelled in spite of rationing, like Hershey's Chocolate, were recognized as their contributions to the war effort surpassed what was expected of them. Hershey's Chocolate emerged not only as a source of war fuel during the 1940s, but also as a symbol of international sensitivity and hope following the destruction of World War II and the emergence of the Cold War. During the Berlin airlift, in the wake of tragedy, chocolate acted as an agent of peace, forming bonds between American soldiers and the communities ravaged by war. The undertold story of the candy bomber exemplifies the use of candy as a diplomatic aid which saw no bounds. Candy was untouched by physical, cultural, and language barriers even in wartime. The progression of Hershey's Chocolate, developing from an unappetizing source of fuel to a sweet symbol of commitment, exemplified the significance of candy as a catalyst to world peace, as it unified the American public behind both the war and Reconstruction efforts in World War II. As the threat of international war loomed in the near future, the American military prepared to fuel soldiers with portable, practical energy. In 1937, the United States Quartermaster Corps looked to the Hershey's Chocolate Company to create a chocolate bar for military ration kits. These chocolate bars were not, however, for pleasure. Captain Paul Logan had a very specific set of criteria for the chocolate. It needed to withstand the conditions of global war while offering soldiers sustenance in emergency situations. His requirements were a bar weighing about 4 ounces, able to withstand high temperatures, high in food energy value, and tasting just a little better than a boiled potato. On August 22, 1942, the Hershey's Chocolate Company received an Army-Navy E-Production Award for their outstanding production rate in the face of wartime rationing of staple ingredients like sugar. The Hershey's Company made a significant contribution to the American effort during World War II, but their impact was far from over. May 8, 1945 would go down into history as VE Day, the day Germans laid down their weapons to the Allied powers. The Nazis had been defeated in accepting an unconditional surrender. This day was celebrated across Europe and in America. Civilians and soldiers were elated. This was not, however, the case for much of Eastern Europe and Asia. In these areas, the damage was so severe that they deemed 1945 year zero. They would have to rebuild from the ground up. Germany was divided into various occupation zones placed under the control of the United States, the British, and the Soviets. Although the United States fought alongside the Soviets during World War II, American distrust in the Soviets' expansionism into Eastern Europe led to the development of hostile relationships between the countries.
Soviets have blockaded Berlin. They blockaded 2.5 million people, cut off all their food supplies coming over East Germany. They got to have stuff quick.
Food, oil, and other goods were withheld from the population of West Berlin. As a result, the United States and the British airlifted goods into the area between 1848 and 1849. This was known as the Berlin Airlift. In the face of such adversity, Colonel Gale Hal Halverson emerged as a symbol of hope for the German children. Halverson trained as a fighter pilot with the Royal Air Force before joining the Army Air Corps as a transport pilot in the Southern Atlantic Theater. Shortly after defeating the Germans in World War II, Hal found himself back in Europe airdropping supplies to the former enemy in what became known as Operation Vittles.
That they would welcome me, wearing the same uniform as bombing them day and night not too long before. I was so interested in them. They're so grateful. I said, look, it's July now, but you wait. You just wait until winter comes. And when that happens, you're not going to be able to land. Don't worry about us. We don't have to have enough to eat. Just don't give up on us. Someday we'll have enough to eat. But if we lose our freedom, we'll never get it back.
One instance of gratitude sparked a chain reaction of empathy in Berlin.
Right. They were so grateful for flour to be free. They wouldn't beg for something so extravagant as chocolate. So I thought, well, if I dropped it out of the airplane, I could give it to them tomorrow. The very same kids that were so good. So I told the kids, come back tomorrow. Stand in this space between the bombed out buildings and the barbed wire fence. When I come over your head, I'll drop enough chocolate for all of you to have a chocolate bar, if you'll share it.
Thus began Operation Little Vittles. Hershey's would break the barriers between two nations, inspiring peace and diplomacy.
Mercedesville still remembers Lieutenant Halverson's influence on the children of Berlin.
It was a new experience to the Berliner children that there are airplanes in the sky, not dropping bombs, but candies and chocolate. And that was a new feeling that the Americans are not animals, but they are friends. And it was the beginning of a real friendship between the Berliners and the Americans.
Hershey's partnership with Operation Little Vittles revealed the underlying support that Americans had for the reconstruction process in Europe. In supporting Operation Little Vittles, Americans won an ideological battle. With Hitler's Holocaust fresh in their mind and Stalin's communist expansion descending upon them, the Americans and Germans rekindled pre-war friendships, starting with the most open-minded part of the population, the children. Hershey's bars acted not only as a peace offering to children like Mercedes, but as a promise. The continued effort of hand-wrapping and airdropping over 23 tons of candy acted as reassurance for the children. As long as the candy kept coming, the Americans would stand by Berlin. Hal stated, without hope, the soul dies. Gratitude, integrity, and service to the unfortunate provide more rewards than all things material. They are the foundation upon which hope is born. They provide the strength by which hope endures. And so it did. On May 12, 1949, the Soviet Union officially ended the blockade, allowing the transport of supplies into West Berlin. The war was over, but the humanitarian effort never stopped. Today, the Air Mobility Command, in the airlift tradition, launches a mission of mercy every 90 seconds somewhere around the world. The American flag on the aircraft tail is the symbol of hope to those in deep despair from whatever the source of oppression.